right. Okay, well, I am going to get going this morning for me. I'm Pauline O'Brien and I'm joining from the Netherlands, and I have the pleasure of chairing the Women in Education Special Interest Group for ECIS. And my role is Director of Leadership Searches and Global Recruitment at ISS, International School Services. But I have this wonderful volunteer role alongside these wonderful ladies that you'll see on the screen right now. We do our best to support women in education, and I'll just remind ourselves of the values of this group, the Women in Education Special Interest Group. So we keep and promote gender equality at the heart of our enterprise. We lead with inclusivity and ethically. We try to build communities that cultivates alliances, allyship, and collaboration amidst diverse perspectives. We commit deeply for measurable impact, and we are advocating for sustainable and systemic change that increases and access and elevates women in education and their allies. And we're also making visible the changes through innovative co-creation for transformation. And we're doing a series of events this school year, and we're delighted this morning to kick off our session with the very esteemed Lesley Meyer. I have known Lesley for many, many years, and I am so delighted and honoured that she's joining us today. Lesley is a phenomenal female leader, and I have been inspired by her since 2014 from our very first meeting. And so I'm really delighted that she has agreed to join us today to share her wisdom with us and the wealth of her experience. Lesley is the Chief Education Officer at Education in Motion. She's based in Singapore but travels globally. Originally from Scotland, graduated from the University of Edinburgh, and she completed her PGCE before taking up her posts in the UK, Germany, Belgium and Switzerland. She is a governor, she's been a head of school, and she leads a huge team now for Education in Motion in Asia. She's been an advocate for safeguarding and child protection, and served on the International Task Force for Child Protection from its inception in 2014. And she's an amazing person, and I think that's probably the most important, obviously. And we're just, Lesley, really thrilled that you can be with us today. I've seen Lesley speak many times, and I thought if we could get her for our group, we'd be really lucky. And so I'm delighted that she agreed to be with us today and to share her wisdom. So Lesley, thank you for being with us again. It really is a joy, and we're delighted. And I'm going to hand over to you. Lesley has said, this session is for you, and so we're not going to break out into groups, because we really would love, think we're okay to have some participation here. So we're going to monitor the chat, so feel free to ask questions or make observations or reflections or anything you'd like us to share with Lesley as she goes through her presentation. Again, this session is for you, and we want to make it as accessible as we possibly can. So Lesley,
thank you.
to you.
Great. Can you hear me okay, Pauline?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Because as everybody on the call will have just noticed, I not only managed to lose the little thing that said switch on your microphone, I then managed to pause the screen sharing. So, I'll probably be talking about the wonders of technology any minute. Listen, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you. And please do pop things into the chat, comments, and Pauline will interrupt me. I've been a teacher for a very long time, so I can easily talk at you for an hour. But ideally, it'd be good to have more of a conversation if we can. But look, building resilience and a pioneering spirit and change in education, I mean, these are huge topics in and of themselves. And I just wanted to start with a little reminder. I have this wonderful title, Chief Education Officer, and I suffer from all the things that go with being called chief. somebody said to me, that means you're on the C-suite, Lesley. And I said, I don't know what the C-suite is. I've spent my whole career in schools and in education. And having got to this role, it's an enormous privilege to be in this role, but actually it really shouldn't be the exception. And I just wanted to put that up there as a reminder to everybody, you know, we belong in these roles. And even though I sometimes do sit in meetings where I am the only female in the room, the only woman leader in the room, I have to keep saying to myself, you know what? You belong here. It's been a long road, lots of challenges, but we all belong in where decisions are being made. So I think it's quite important for me to just say that right up at the front. So the idea today was just to sort of go through a few ideas around change management. What are we talking about when we're talking about change management? What does it look like in education, particularly for women and for women leaders? Then have a thought, one or two thinking moments around anchoring that change and actually managing it. And then I would like to just, if I may, if we've got time, walk you through an example of change that I've been involved in. And I'm also going to take you through an example of change that I managed quite disastrously. And there were a lot of lessons that I personally learned, which I hope will be worth sharing. And perhaps, you know, it's all very well to always talk about one's successes. I could write a book on the things that I haven't managed particularly well for all sorts of reasons. And I'd love to share those lessons with you. And then perhaps we can have a conversation if there's time at the end about how you can look at change management from your perspective of where you are at the moment. So look, Pauline's introduced me. That's me. You can probably hear, those of you who are familiar with the Scottish accent, there's still a little bit of it hanging in there. But I've actually been in international education for well over 30 years now. Worked in a lot of different types of schools, taught a lot of different curricula. I've been very fortunate in the schools that I've worked in. And I joined Education in Motion, which at the time was called Dulwich College International. Now this is my 9th year since joining them. I came here from the International School of Geneva. And it was a big step for me to join this particular education, this group, because I guess I'd got to the point where I thought, you know what, Lesley, you've always worked in not-for-profit. Why don't you have a go at the dark side? You know, go and join a for-profit and see what it's like out there in the more commercial world. Is it truly still about education? And despite some challenges along the road, I have to say it really has been a fantastic experience. But I know that isn't perhaps true everywhere right now. So look, that's been me. Again, I would love to say that this career that I have enjoyed and I've been honoured to serve in so many different roles was all planned. You know, I would love to be able to come on here as a leader and say, right, ladies, you know, well, I had my 5-year plan, my 7th, did I, heck. I stumbled into a lot of these jobs. I saw opportunities, and every now and then I was brave enough to put my hand up and say, this is an issue, I'd like to work on it. So I started teaching and then moved into leading across multiple countries and across many roles. Maybe the midpoint there, the work for the EU Commission, that's when the UK was still part of the European Union. I served in one of the European Union schools. And to give you an example, I was head of English. Big English department. And I was sitting looking at colleagues and teaching in the classroom. And I realized we were a school, very large school, over 3,000, took in what I can only describe as a comprehensive intake, but actually there was only one exam route. And if you didn't pass that year, the children, there was a vote at the end of the year, whether you repeated the year or whether you moved out of the school, because you were only allowed to repeat twice. And the teacher in me went, ooh, this is not making me feel good. This is not my view of education. And thought, well, maybe there's something I could do, but I don't know much about really differentiating well. I don't know much about special educational needs or additional educational needs. I'm not an expert on bilingual education. So I decided I needed to go, and I went on to the Open University, and I took a couple of courses, and I got myself a diploma, and then I did a degree. And then I said to the school and then to the European Commission, is this something I could contribute to? So in a way, although my career has been a bit haphazard, if I'm honest, ladies, and definitely not all well planned, what I have done is I've been able to recognize where there was a need, where I felt I could contribute if I could acquire the knowledge and skills needed, and I've gone for it. Sometimes with success, sometimes without success. And along the road, I've met some wonderful, wonderful mentors, both male and female, who have put out the hand and helped me on that journey. So I think that's part of being a woman in leadership, is actually also saying, where can I contribute? Where can I give? Where can I serve? And what do I need to be able to do that? And that, for me, has been part of my journey. As Pauline said, I joined as a volunteer on the task force in 2014. I've opened 3 schools from startups in my time, 1 in Germany and 2 in China. Again, a huge learning experience working in teams. And I guess that's where I've really begun to understand it isn't all about, the world according to Lesley. You'll be very relieved to know. It really is about building that team and working with some amazing people. And now the role is to develop a shared educational strategy. So I now lead 16 schools, mainly across Asia, but also in Switzerland and in the UK, and working in collaboration with a small education team and some extraordinary leaders of our schools across the group. So that's really been my journey, my own personal career and my own personal highlight. The task force on child protection was a highlight in my career, and I'll pause on that one if I may, and Pauline will remember it well, because that's probably the moment, and in some ways, I'm ashamed to admit this, but that was probably the moment where I really sat back and thought about the whole responsibility of being an educator. It wasn't that I hadn't been a head of year or been in charge of pastoral care, and I'd been a deputy head and then a head by that point, a school principal. But it was at that moment where I sat back and thought, goodness me, but what we do and what we can give to these young people who have been trusted into our care is enormous. And that's where the responsibility and the accountability, I think for the first time, really struck me. And that was probably 10, 15 years into my career. So that was a real turning point for me. So sharing a little bit of how it's been. So let's think about your career, I think it is worth reflecting yourselves on what have those key experiences been for you as a teacher leader, as a leader on your journey. Who were the mentors, those key people who have shaped your path? Not always for the positive, because I have also worked as a women leader for people where I've gone, I actually don't want to lead that way. Not only does that not work for me, but I really don't agree with some of the things I'm seeing. People who weren't collaborative, where decisions were taken top down without really even getting the information required at times. People who sometimes actually, I'll use perhaps an old-fashioned word, but sometimes they just were quite rude to others and certainly not respectful. And those experiences also shaped my leadership journey in perhaps I don't want to be like that. That is not productive kind of way. And then those extraordinary women that have been part of my life as well as part of my career, including Pauline on the call, where I thought they bring a wisdom, they bring a different perspective. And I think that diversity of perspective in your career is of incredible value. And then the challenges that we have to overcome, I'm going to come back to those in a moment, as well as the significant achievements and milestones. And then I think I posed a question. Do you believe that you have a vision as a leader? You know, we're often asked when we go in as a head to a school, what's your vision for my school? And I'm usually thinking, I haven't a clue because I don't know you yet. I don't know you as a community. I don't know your aspirations. I don't know your worries. I don't know how I can serve. So I think to come in with that sort of vision is different. But having a vision as a leader, I think that's something each of us should work very hard to develop. What kind of leader do you want to be? How do you want the people around you to be empowered through your leadership? And I think that's an important vision to actually work on if you haven't already started. So, education in motion very quickly. As I said, big group. We're not gigantic. You know, there are much, much larger groups out there. But I would say it's a group that's focused on really putting children first. I mean, I always say students come first, okay? That's from the chairman down. And I get that sort of slightly weary look. I can't see all of you because I don't know if you're feeling weary. Because who puts students last? But my experience has been that I've been allowed to work with people who even at the boardroom will say, what's the impact on the students in our care? I think that's incredibly valuable. And if you're looking for developing your career, ask those questions. How do you put students first in a decision? Where does it happen? Can you give me an example of it happening? Because then you know that these are going to be people that are aligned with your values and what you want. So we've also got a very large pillar in what we do about sustainable education. The chairman walked into the room one day. We were in a boardroom in a hotel just before COVID, and he said, we've got 11,500 students. And they've got caregivers, they've got parents, they've got grandparents, they've got many of them drivers and nannies, and that tells you a lot about perhaps our parent body. And he said, just think of the impact we could have through education for sustainability if we took that seriously. If these young people all become motivated and caring students who you can see the mission there to make a positive impact on people and the planet, that matters. And I think developing a vision like that, one that you can truly bring your own values to, is again something I would recommend. This is way beyond exam results. This is about empowering the young people, and again, who have been entrusted to us, a positive impact on people and the planet. Something that I care about a great deal, and I hope you do too. So there we are. Students come first, I mentioned. A pioneering spirit, constantly and consistently seeking to improve and innovate the educational provision. The schools you can see there, the one on the left is Singapore School. You can see very modelled very much on the Barry building of Dulwich College in London. The middle there, that's Green School in Bali. Very different type of school. And the one on the right is HIF. It has a fantastic name. The HIF, the Hoch Alpines Institut Futan. So HIF for short. That's our school in Switzerland. And we try very much to actually work as a family of schools, leveraging the people, the resources, the technology to drive education forward. And I think collaboration, you all know, is something that perhaps we as women leaders really do bring to whichever role we're in. The ability to collaborate, empower, and support other women, other people. So I think working as a family of schools has been really important. And again, goes back to the values that we wish to espouse. So, what is change management? What am I actually talking about? Well, I quite liked this quote from George Bernard Shaw. Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. And again, I would suggest that that is a very important thing to think about. Now, I'm not talking about the odd boss that I've had over my journey, who quite frankly has changed, and I am going to say, his mind, depending on who the last person in the office was. We've all come across those people. It's deeply destabilizing and actually makes it almost impossible to organize yourself for change management and to make progress. But properly well thought change management is something that really can transform education and transform the lives of young people. So I've touched on my journey as a woman leader and some of the moments that I navigated change, going through different schools, joining a for-profit organization, moving from Switzerland to Asia, lots of different moments, and then moving from being a classroom teacher, which I adored, through to now being Chief Education Officer. And I want to go on now to talk a little bit about the unique challenges that I would suggest that certainly I've experienced as a woman in a senior leadership role. And this collective empowerment, which is very much, I know, at the heart of what the ladies on the call are doing, that collective empowerment is very important. Change isn't just a challenge, an opportunity to grow, innovate, and lead with courage and compassion, because I think those two belong together. So, define it. Guiding individuals and organizations through transitions, because that is what it's about. Managing change is guiding people through what can be at times very difficult, emotional, fearful moments. And I'm not suggesting everybody is change resistant. We've all got our, hey, people that just love change. But most people look at change and think, well, what about me? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for the children in my care? We have a reputation as teachers. I don't know if people on the call are aware of this, but we have a reputation for being very difficult to manage. You know, I work with all these commercial people and private equity people who go, oh, teachers, they're so change resistant. Actually, I don't think that's true. I think educators are very open to change. I think educators believe in change that is of benefit to their students and to their pupils, to the children that we work with and the families. It's not that we're guarding against change. We just want it to be right and get it right for those children. They only get one shot in year 2. Be careful, be cautious. Rose Luckin, some of you may know, she has a wonderful phrase that I really like. She talks, and she's talking specifically about AI. And she said recently, she said, think fast, act slowly. And I think there's a lot of merit in that, in thinking about that statement from Rose. It's not about change resistance. Think fast, but act slowly. Be cautious as educators, because we have a duty of care as well. So effective change management is essential in education because we work with diverse cultures. We work with the most precious commodity, I'll use that horrible word, possible, a child and their future. And we need to understand that in order to make change in our institutions, the cultural differences between us have to play a major part. So let's think about education specifically, understanding that change in education. Look, I won't dwell on this because I think unless you've been, living underground, you know that education's under a great deal of pressure. AI, everybody tells me, before COVID, I was told regularly that there wouldn't be any schools left. And lo and behold, we all discovered that we're social beings, we're herd creatures, and most of the parents I know were very happy, not all, to have their children go back to school. Children missed each other and they missed their trusted adult. So do I think that AI is going to make schools redundant? I personally do not. But you can all come back and shout at me in a couple of years if I'm wrong. Rapid tech development across the board. My goodness me, but it's rapid. And the possibilities, the opportunities that this is presenting to us, and I'm going to talk more of this, extraordinary. Again, think fast, act slowly, because there's also another dimension to this. What about the child's brain? What about the impact on their socialization? Can we protect them from the opportunities offered through tech development? Again, it's not just any product. This is a human being that we're dealing with. Global disruption, I think, again, a massive pressure on education. There's global disruption politically. We've seen what's happened with universities in the States with student visas. We've seen what's happened politically in many countries around the world. But also along with that, our young people are growing up in really quite a tense time. They're not immune. They don't live in a bubble. They hear what's going on in the news. Their parents talk about it. They are aware that this is a tense time politically for all sorts of different reasons. So there is global disruption. And then there's the change in ownership of many, many international schools. Huge, huge influx of money from private equity. Is it all good? Absolutely not. Is it all bad? Absolutely not. So how do we manage that change as educators? And how do we as women feel comfortable in what can often seem a very difficult, commercially driven financial world? And then shifting expectations of our parents and shifting expectations of international schools. When I began in international schools, we served expat communities. You know, they floated across the world, being paid for by companies, moving from country to country. The schools that I operate, I suppose, lead now would be a nicer word, but the schools that I lead now are predominantly for host community children. What is that challenge? Well, that challenge might be that they come in at age 2 and they stay with us until they're 18. That challenge might be that we must make sure we also honour their culture, their background, so their language. How does that play out when we're perhaps aiming at exams that are purely in English or perhaps French or perhaps Spanish? So I think there are lots and lots of changes that are bringing about pressure on education. And how do we as leaders support those we lead who are on the front line of dealing with many of these changes? So there's the emotional response to change, fear, resistance, and there's opportunity, there's excitement. But there's a balance to be found. I've always gone back to saying, let's think about the why. I think we have to have a reason for change. Some of it's being imposed upon us, but we have to have a reason to actually say, this change will make things better for those we lead and for the children. So there's also always that personal benefit. We all have to think about, what do we gain from a change? If I'm going to stand up and personally argue for change across the group, I actually have to also think to myself, now, Lesley, what's in it for you? Yeah, why do you believe? And I don't mean financial gain, but it could be, why do I believe it's right? Which of my values is that change speaking to? I think a degree of self-reflection in change management and honesty in change management is really good. Am I rejecting that change because I don't really like it? Well, that's not good enough. What does the research tell me? What are the diverse voices and the included voices that I have brought around me and my team tell me? What do they think? Again, shaping opinions, it's not just about personal gain, but it's about personal reflection. What are the organizational benefits? Is it good for the school, the company, the class? Is it a positive? And why are we doing this project? What does it achieve? What are our goals? We've got our purpose, but what are our goals? So, as a woman leading change, there are lots of challenges. There is no question. There are cultural differences in the way perhaps women, and perhaps also gender differences, in the way that women manage change. Perhaps collaboration is something we want to pause on and think about a bit more deeply. But there are also stereotypes that we have to deal with. Well, Lesley, you're a head teacher, really. You can't do numbers. What? What do you mean I can't do numbers? I've been running a budget since I was a junior head of English, because my head of English didn't like that. But Lesley, you're not commercial. You know, you didn't work for McKinsey. Oh, okay. You're just a teacher. Right, thanks for that. You know, fitting a woman into a box. Yeah. How many of the men have I seen around me in my career go on to be CEOs? I'm a CEDO. Now, that's not a complaint. I'm very happy being a CEDO. Did somebody think, oh, she's a CEDO in the making. Maybe she needs to do a financial course with Harvard. Let's develop her. No, she's a teacher. She can do the education bit. Now, again, don't misunderstand me. I could have put my hand up, but the reason I'm saying these things is to say, overcome these barriers yourselves. Take that, look at the key people around you, find your mentors who will be also advocating for you, and identify, do you want to do that? Then why not you? You belong anywhere where decisions are being made. And again, I go right back to that wonderful judge who said that really powerful phrase at the beginning. And then there's the gender bias that I think undoubtedly we face. When you add in a little bit of age to it, there's the regular, now when will you be retiring question. Just as when you're young, you'll get, do you have enough time with your children? These are very real questions that people ask. Do they ask them of my male colleagues? Nah. Honestly, they don't. So what do we as women do about that? How do we prepare younger women for these questions that are still asked? You know, if you're a woman of colour, how do you prepare younger women to deal with those questions? If you come from a particular religious background, how do we support you as senior leaders to be ready for those questions and to deal with them and not be knocked off and think, well, I don't belong here. This is not my place. This is not my time. So I think I'm saying that women leaders have a responsibility to help others on this path. And then there's our underrepresentation at senior leadership. I was very shocked about 3 years ago when somebody said to me, Lesley, you're the most senior leader in the company. Why aren't there more female heads? You're not helping. It completely threw me. It absolutely threw me because I thought, hang on, I'm all about female empowerment. What's going on here? Why does nobody know that? And I realized, one, we hadn't had any applications for the big schools that we lead from women leaders. And two, I hadn't consciously said, we need to look at this. I hadn't opened my mouth. In my head, I'm the role model, and in my head, I'm doing all of these things. But honestly, colleagues, had I really gone through the job ads to see if the language we were using was the right language to attract female leaders? I hadn't done that piece of work. I have now. So sometimes it's also about, going back to what I said earlier, reflecting on one's own role. And I know I could have, should have, and am doing much more. Excuse me. So effective change management is empowering other women to overcome obstacles too, so that they can become really effective leaders in the schools and the institutions that we work in. It's not just about it. I think what I'm trying to say is it's about doing it explicitly, not just making the assumption. The fact that I'm a woman doesn't mean that other women get opportunities. It's something I have to contribute to. And I have to discuss with the men around me because they need to have the awareness to make the contribution too. And we can drive these positive outcomes. But why am I still often the only woman in the room? We're not there yet. So in education, I would argue, if I may, that women must take a lead in change in education. And again, sometimes I hesitate when I talk about this, but I can only say it's been my experience, because in a way, am I also making a gender stereotype? Because I was going to say, as women, we are better at collaboration. Wow, really, Lesley? Isn't that just as bad a statement? Catch myself. But if I look at my experience now of 40 years, I have found that the women that I have worked with who have mentored me have been very strong collaborators with a deep-seated belief in the power of collaboration. I have found those women to be inclusive. I have found them empathetic and aware of empathy and the need of empathy in growing trust in a team. And I found them to be courageous because they've overcome many challenges and they are community builders. Now, I'm not saying there are no men out there that do those things too, because there are plenty of great male leaders that also exhibit these traits. But most of the women I have worked with have really focused on these absolute essentials. And that's why I think we need more women leading change in education, because these are very powerful tools in a change context. So leading a culture for change, because ultimately, you know, that wonderful Peter Drucker phrase of, you know, culture, I think it was Peter that said it, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I'm always being asked to, you know, bring together strategies, and I want to say it's all about culture, because actually culture is at the heart of great change management, empowering teams so people feel ownership. That's how you make change happen more successfully and more smoothly. Create a supportive leadership culture where it's not about a deficit model. You haven't done this. You are not good at this. Have these 5 KPIs and they all focus on weakness. You know, create a supportive culture where you can inspire, you can show empathy, and you can also show vulnerability, because that's how you foster trust. It's okay to say, do you know what? I hadn't thought of that. It's okay to say, thanks for bringing that idea to me. And then acknowledging, hey, everybody, this idea came from so-and-so. You know, building that powerful culture where you are not somebody who knows everything. We already do it in the classroom. In the classroom, you know, when perhaps in the Victorian age, you know, the master stood at the front with a, you know, the stick and was the font of all knowledge. But hey, you know, we left that behind even when I started teaching. It's not about knowing everything and being vulnerable. But vulnerability also means saying, I got it wrong. And I've already told you a few things that I got wrong on my journey, and there are more to come. I think prioritizing well-being and being agile are 2 key components in leading that culture of change. Sometimes when I say prioritizing well-being, everybody says, well, that means you're going on holiday a lot. That means you go home early. That's not about well-being. Those are important. You know, leave matters, yeah? Going home to family matters. Well-being is feeling comfortable in one's own skin. So therefore, operating in that comfort zone. I don't mean not challenging, but I mean being authentic as a leader. I have met women, and I'm going to say something and hope you forgive me for it. I'll see if you all drop off the call. I've met women on my journey who have stepped out of their own natural way of being and have tried to lead as if they were copying men. And I'm not saying there aren't female leaders around for whom that is where they feel comfortable. But if it's not who you are, authentic leadership is absolutely key in creating this positive leadership culture for change. Be who you are. I have a very dear friend who's an extremely competent, extremely experienced head. She cries at the drop of a hat. Take her to, you know, the primary school end of year play. She's bubbling away in the front there. Put her up on a stage in an assembly and something touches her and off she goes. She's in her 60s now, and she learned a long time ago to say, you know what? I am an emotional woman. I therefore allow myself to show emotion. She doesn't impose it on other people. She's not making other people uncomfortable, but she's being authentic as a female leader. And I think that would be a huge piece of advice I'd give any of you thinking about how you make this leadership culture for change. That's what true well-being is actually all about. And it does maintain high morale and enables you to be adaptive. And then encouraging innovation and communication, solving problems and driving change through the clarity of your communication. And again, being explicit of the purpose of change. So I love the golden circle. It may not be new anymore. And I hope again, you'll forgive me for reaching back. But the purpose is key to everything. What is the why? Why change? You can't, if you don't feel it yourself and you haven't done your homework and you haven't worked on the real reason for the change and you haven't got your data together, then why should anybody listen to you? Why should anybody follow you? Figure out the purpose. Why do we do what we do now? There's nothing worse than when you put up a change and somebody says, oh, well, we tried that change in 1984, you know, from the back of the room. And you think, oh, well, we better not do it again because you haven't figured out your why. Then you think about the how. Then you think about the what and the results and your outcome that you want. But start with the purpose. Why? So, oh, don't know how that one popped back in. Apologies. Okay, communicating change effectively. I hesitated to put the old imposter syndrome up there, but you know what? I think I've still got to put it up there for myself, even if it's not something that you all feel. There are still moments where I go, should I be here? Do I belong here? Am I good enough? Well, they've all been to Yale and Stanford and I haven't, and they've all got MBAs and I haven't. And so there is that imposter syndrome. I live with it. It's the elephant on the shoulder. I think the only thing that I would say is as I'm communicating change effectively, I actually am aware of that monkey sitting there. And I reflect on how I'm going to manage my monkey and how I'm going to deal with it and how I'm going to put cloth over the monkey's head and I'm going to go for it anyway. But be aware of it, recognize it in others and be kind and patient when you know you're holding yourself back and other women are holding themselves back because of this. It's not an excuse. It's just, for me, something that's there. Embracing your emotional side. I was just talking about my colleague, you know, who cries. As a woman, I am an emotional leader. I know I am. Now, it doesn't mean that I walk in crying to a board meeting. I'm professional. I can hold it together. But of course, I am an emotional being. And I think that's okay because it's who I am. And I think having the courage to be authentic as a woman is another way to communicate change. And use your storytelling talents. Find a way to tell stories to people. That is a really effective leadership tool, and you will take people on the journey with you. Always listen and learn from others. We never stop learning. We have that, you know, very hackneyed, overused, cliched phrase, lifelong learners. But it's not about that. It's about bringing together a diverse team, including people with differing perspectives, and listening, having the respect to listen and learn from their perspectives as you take a decision. It's a really key leadership skill, but it helps you make change. And don't be frightened of making yourself vulnerable. So, the glass ceiling, it is there. It absolutely still exists. The glass ceiling will go away when women help other women break through that ceiling. There are lots of ways to help other women. And I've just mentioned a couple of them by being vulnerable, by being explicit in your communication in the way that, for example, I had failed to be, by making sure your teams are diverse and inclusive. So you have those differing voices, and by being authentic as a woman leader, a leader of women as well. And I think all of these things support us in removing that glass ceiling, recognizing the imposter syndrome, but not letting it stop you, seeing a white space and going for it. Overcoming it. I like this phrase from Michelle Obama. I share it with you. Time and maturity and success. Time and maturity and success. It doesn't mean you've got to be old. Just putting that out there, okay? You can be young and overcome this too. but you've got to work on yourself. You've got to give yourself time. Time doesn't have to be years. It's giving yourself time to mature into realizing you as a woman leader, you're good enough. And look at the impact it can have. You can see it's almost paralyzing when this gets out of control. You have a new project, you get anxious or you over-prepare. You have this increase in self-doubt and anxiety and feeling like a fraud. Oh, I just got lucky. Somebody else would have done it better. Putting yourself down, that's self-deprecation. That certainly I have a tendency to do. What, Pauline, you want me to speak to these ladies? What do I know? Yeah, there must be somebody better you can get. And actually identifying that, realizing you're good enough and doing it anyway. I think that's key to managing change in leadership. The emotional side of change management. I like this model. When you make change in an organization, in a classroom, in a school, in a company, you're actually ending something. Something's got to stop. You're losing something. So who's losing? Why are they losing? How are they feeling about what they're losing? Have you thought about their emotions? Have you let go? Have they let go? Can you help them let go so that they can move into that neutral zone where change can begin? And then transition through into that new beginning. But this process is really helpful. And when I'm thinking of a change, I often draw it up on the whiteboard in front of me and think, okay, who do I need to think about, including me? Am I ready to do this? So very much an emotional journey as we transition. And who do we need to help to transition with us? And who can help us to transition? I recommend Bridget's transition model to you. This is another one I like. This is one of the first ones that I ever came across, 1969, and no, I was not doing this as a baby. The change curve, the implementation curve, the dip. Now, this is quite an extreme version of it, okay? But you can have a much lighter version of this. You're introducing a new maths program. What? You want a new maths program? There's nothing wrong with the one we've got. Ah, so how do we let go of what we've got? Why do we want to change? What was our purpose? Have we talked about that? Have we listened? Well, I'm not doing it. Denial. It's not going well. It's all your fault, Lesley. Why did you make us do this? It was perfectly all right before. Oh, well, it's probably my fault. I didn't do it properly. And then you're in your dip. They've got depression and confusion. I prefer the term implementation dip. It's a little gentler, but we've all been there. It can get worse. The maths scores are going down, says the board. Why on earth did you change it? Yeah, the maths scores were fine before. Now you've made it worse. God, what have I done? Oh, well, actually, it's beginning to get a little better. Oh, I think we've helped those students who were struggling with our previous maths program. Maybe that was our why. Therefore, we've solved a problem. Now, I wish I could say that change management was a beautiful curve like that, because, of course, once you get to 7 and you feel you've got ever so slightly higher than where you were when you started, it all starts again. Yeah, it's not a smooth journey. But these are the emotions that you're listening to and you're preparing for in the people you lead. Take them with you. People, this is going badly right now. We're in that implementation dip. Let's work on our curve. Bring them on that journey with you. Power of storytelling, make it human. Some of our students are really struggling with this maths program. Do you remember little Susan? Yes, Susan really found that scheme wasn't working for her. What can we do to help Susan? Personalize it, make it relatable, tell those stories and make those emotional connections. Again, something I would suggest that women are particularly good at doing. And you use it to share your vision and rally a bit of support when you embark on a change. So sometimes it does not go well. I'm conscious of the time and I know we want to leave a little time for people to speak. So I arrived at a school, very, very famous school. And my new team said, hey, Lesley, we've been working for ages on bring your own device. Everything's ready. We've got the spec. We're not going to have heritage machines. Everybody's up for it. Let's just get those letters out. I'd come from a school where we had high levels of technology already. And I went, what? But they haven't even got this in the senior school yet. We better get these letters out, says I. Signed them, sent them out, and all hell broke loose. Complaints to the board, staff uprising, parent meetings, and I had, the mothers and fathers with the arms crossed at the front, we hate you. Just as I was doing this, a report came out saying that Wi-Fi was bad for children's brains. So I then also had to deal with the fact that I was being personally held responsible for children who were going to have cancer of the brain, God bless them, in the future. You name it, it was thrown at me. It was my worst ever change management experience. And what had I not done? I had not done my homework. I had not thought about the purpose properly. I hadn't really understood the culture of my new school. I wanted my new team to have a quick win, and I went for them, but their opinions were not diverse. Where was my consultation of diverse opinions? When did I ask the people that were going to say no to me? In other words, I really mismanaged the change. And as a woman leader, I went home and cried just about every night for certainly a month because it was horrible. It was horrible. Did I survive it? Yes. Did the school survive it? Yes. Did the parents forgive me? Yes. Did I send all the staff on training courses? Yes. But I didn't have to do a lot of damage because I, as a new woman leader, did not do my job properly. And that is a very salutary example that I share with you because it really hurt, I can tell you. And it took me a while to manage. So, mindset change, let's go to that one. It's about seeing things in a new way. I saw things in a new way. I just forgot that not everybody else did too. And that's how you don't change manage. Think about your impact. Think about the existing barriers. Adopt a process for effective change and communicate. Equip and support others in that change and do it as a proud, successful female leader. I just relied on early adopters and innovators. Hooray, it'll be great. I forgot about the late majority and the laggards who were having nothing to do with it. I didn't manage change. And I didn't identify that other people require explicit intervention in order to be able to change. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm sure you can find some of these yourselves on how to lead change, but prepare yourself to lead your staff. This is one that we now use at EIM that I just wanted finally to share with you. Awareness raising, which means that everybody understands, or most people, you never get everybody, but the majority of people understand the reasons. Start that desire by getting people involved in the change. Give people the knowledge to be successful in changing. Implement it and perform required skills yourself and help others to do the same. And then reinforce. That ADKER model is one that I was given by some people at Microsoft we were working with, and I found it to be very successful. Whichever model you choose for change, be comfortable with it yourself. We're hiring a director of change management. We could come up with strategies that make sense. That sounds harder. And that, I think, says it all about change management. You need to lead the change as women leaders, whatever that change would be. Plan it and remember my horrible mistakes. So, number one, do not ever do this. I need say no more. Never rush change the way that I did. Take your time, think it through. Adker, it works for us. Why? Why now? What happens if we don't change? Through to the measurements that make change sustainable. We decided that we needed to change the way we use technology, and I'm just finishing off. We used imagine if statements to inspire people to think about, imagine if, what would you love? We called it our book of dreams. This was all about technology, not very sexy, but our book of dreams. And the outcome? We managed to stay way ahead on the introduction of technology and holding on to the good aspects of our use of online learning during COVID and not the bad aspects of it. Because we let other people dream and share their dreams. And with that, Pauline, I'll hand back to you.
Lesley, thank you so much. I have written so many notes. I've learned so much myself, and I've just had a quick look in the chat, and I think I haven't missed anything other than accolades for what you were sharing and recognition for what you were sharing. And I saw a lot of nodding for those with the cameras on. I saw a lot of nodding and agreement there. So thank you so much. So I do want to hand over, if anyone would like to, put the camera on and unmute, or unmute and ask a question or share something with Lesley. We have a couple of minutes left, and we really invite you to do that. And perhaps as you think about your questions or your reflections, I'm just going to share a couple of things that I wrote down that really resonated with me, if I may. You know, you talked about so many things, you know, recognizing needs, where can you contribute, and to go for it. You know, I think that really is so key, because sometimes we're always thinking about what do they expect, what do they want, what should I do, rather than saying, I see this, and so I know I can do this. So how do I, you know, put that in place? How do I come with a solution, let's say, to something? You know, you talk about what can I give and how can I serve? You know, I think they're really important. And I'll just add to that, what can I give and what can I serve? That benefits me as well. It's not just the giving, it's also the receiving, you know, to move on with our everything. And then you know, you talked about think fast, act slowly, you know, managing people through change, you know, finding your mentors, overcoming barriers, you know, all of these things. There's so much, but hopefully somebody else would like to share at this point. Anyone would like to unmute? I'm seeing informative session. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your experience. It's truly inspiring, so informative. Fabulous, Lesley. Thank you. What a meaningful dose of inspiration. There you are.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank
Wonderful
you all.
and very inspirational. Thank you. Absolutely fascinating and inspirational. Thank you. So you've got a lot of comments there of people really resonating and taking on board what you've said.
Great.
And in closing, you said true well-being is feeling comfortable in one's own skin.
Yeah.
I think the well-being word is used so broadly these days, and for someone of a certain age, I have struggled with, what does that mean? What is well-being? Everybody keeps telling me I need to look after my well-being, but I didn't know what that was, and you have just absolutely given me the definition of what I've needed to understand that well-being piece. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. And I think, Pauline, I think the key there with that one is, that's why I said you know, I went to have my nails done yesterday. That's part of my well-being, you know, I really enjoy it. But as a leader looking for my well-being, it's about being my authentic self as a woman in leadership. To me, that's really what well-being in leadership is about.
And I think, you know, you touched on that as well. You said, you know, that some women change their leadership style to reflect a male leadership style. That was our example for so long. And I don't think that we dared, and it wasn't acceptable to be authentic leaders. It wasn't acceptable to be emotionally intelligent and, you know, be and share that with our team. So I think a key message as well is that we can be the leaders we want to be, knowing that we're still going to have results and impact.
Absolutely.
And we're going to care for people along the way in doing it. Thank you again so much.
Very welcome.
Like to share anything at this point? I'm delighted to see Tonya and Shireen from the committee on the Women in Education. Thanks for joining this morning and your support. If you'd like to share any closing comments, please.
It's been brilliant. Thank you so much, Lesley. As I dropped a comment there about just, it's like a dose of inspiration, and just so it's just the way you phrase what you've shared. It's so intentional. It's so spot on. And I think that you know, we live in a world where we're so inundated with so much all the time. And I just felt like the way you paced it and the intentionality of the wording and the heart you brought to it really, it's left a you know, really positive impact here. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Tonya. That's so kind of you.
I'd like to say one quick word as well. Well, two things that I noted lately. Thank you so much. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you? Nice to see you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this session, and I've got a whole page of notes as well, Pauline. There's a couple of things that stuck out. I popped one thing in the chat where I'd done some research with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross a while ago, and she did work on near-death experiences, which I found really funny when you're talking about change, because sometimes people can sort of express it as, oh my God, it's so difficult. But the thing that I wrote down in short was, you will survive it all. You will survive it all. There were many references to that, but there are ways that you can help yourself survive, which means, you know, being part of networks like this, having mentors, you know, establishing coaching relationships with people, having people you can cry with, you know, and celebrate with, and learning how to build allyship and network, I think, is really key. And we are often, as women, brought into spaces where you are assumed that you know how everything works, but you're coming into political spaces which many of us don't have the background on. So I think a lot of the things you said have just reinforced this idea that we have to support one another when you refer to the glass ceiling, you know? So thank you again. I'll be thinking about this for some time, and I'll be referencing this for sure in the session that I'll be doing in February. So thank you again.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So again, thank you, Lesley.
You're very welcome.
Thanks from us all. I mean,
my pleasure.
We'd love to have you back at some point as well, please, because I think you've so much to share. And as Tonya so eloquently put, you know, it resonates with all of us. It comes in, it's heartfelt, and it's your lived experience that we can feel, and that helps us learn. Everybody, you've created an atmosphere that allows us all in to share your journey, and we feel part of it, and therefore it helps us also be vulnerable to think about our own journeys. I was thinking about some of the mistakes I've made along the way, and I can laugh at them now, whereas, you know, I didn't think I would survive at the time, right? So, you know, it's just wonderful to share this with you. So thank you. Again, thank you everyone for joining. We have our next session on November 6th. Keep an eye on our socials for that coming out. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Again, heartfelt thanks to Lesley. Please show your applause, and have a wonderful rest of the day and rest of the week, and onward we go in our leadership journeys.
Onward we go, everybody.
So much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much. Amazing. Great. And oh, she's gone. Lesley's gone. All right. Take care. We'll be in touch, Shireen. Take care. Thanks, Abby. You can stop the recording now, please.